Welcome to the solution to today's 5 a day. Here's question 1. Now, the intention here is that you do this without a calculator. So I'm going to assume that you've done that and you've tried. Now, this is all about place value. Okay, so I've written my number in my columns here. And I'm just going to write the value of each of these columns is and make sure that we're clear about that. So this is the ones column, tens column, hundreds column, thousands column, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. And our decimal point what this does is it separates numbers bigger than 1 from those smaller than 1. So the numbers on this side are bigger than 1 and the numbers this side are smaller than 1. Now in my work here, our decimal point is never going to move because it's just a separator. It's a separator between these columns, and you'll see why in a moment. As we go from one column to the other, each one is 10 times bigger than the previous one. And this also happens here as we move from column to column to column to column to column to column. Each column is 10 times bigger than the previous one. Now, what we're being asked to do is to multiply our number by 1,000. And 1,000 is 10 times 10 times 10. And we've got 3 zeros on the end here. 10 times 10 times 10. So if each of these columns is 10 times bigger than the previous one, then the way for me to do this exercise is to move each of these digits 3 columns. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So my 7 that is in the ones column is now in the thousands column, 7,000, and that makes sense, doesn't it? 7 times 1,000 is 7,000. Makes sense. And our 2 has moved from the tenths column 3 columns along to the hundreds column. Now we could stop there, but if we just wrote this number, it would look like 72, and it wouldn't be clear that my 7 is meant to be in the thousands column. So I need to put in my placeholder zeros to show that my 7 is in the thousands column and the 2 is in the hundreds column. So there is our answer, 7,200. Now, if you've had any trouble with that question, then I really want you to have a look at Nugget 2.11 on Century, which is about exactly this, multiplying by 10, 100, or 1,000. And we've got a similar exercise in question 4 coming up, which is about dividing. So if you've struggled with one or both of these, then probably a good idea to look at the sections on this video on both question 1 and question 4. Okay? Okay, question 2. So how far was Nikki from home at 11:30? Well, we've got a graph here, and I see that we haven't labelled the axes on the grid here. So this looks as if it's got time here. And we've got miles over here. Okay, so 11:30. Remember, there are 60 minutes in an hour. So 11:30 is going to be halfway between 11 and 12. And if you're struggling with some of how time is broken up, I'll give you a century nugget that you can look at later. So we read this off the graph here, and then across here, and so Nikki's distance from home here is 12. I'm sure by now you've got used with these 5 a day to remember to put in your units. So we're 12 miles away. Now I said we've got a number of century units going on here. We have 24.12, which is on reading graphs. 37.01, which is a bit of help with the clock. And there's another one, 36.01 on scales. Got a scale here that's going up in fours, 0, 4, 8, 12, 16. If you've got problems reading off scales like this, then I think this exercise here, 36.01, might be some use to you. Okay, question 3. We need to be a little bit careful here because we've got the word average appearing in here, and we immediately tend to think about mean, mode, median at that point. These words are coming together, average speed, and that's because when we travel somewhere, our speed isn't constant. If you're in the bus stops, it accelerates, it goes faster, it goes slower. But what we do find is that over a certain period of time, in this case 2 hours, we have travelled a certain distance. So we have travelled 16 miles in 2 hours, and we measure speed in miles per hour. And this word here means for every 1. So this is, oh look, here comes the ratio table that we keep on using in these 5 a days, because I want what happens in 1 hour. So we've got miles, hour. If I've gone 16 miles in 2 hours, then in 1 hour, how far have I gone? I've gone 16 divided by 2, which is 8 miles per hour, which we're going to write as miles per hour. So there's our answer there. And I think the nuggets to look at again are very similar from the ones for question 2, 24.12 for reading graphs, 16.01 for the ratio table. Okay, question 4. Now, this is very similar to question 1 in this set, and obviously the idea here is that I want you to do this without a calculator. So I've put here the various places for what our numbers mean. The ones column, tens, hundreds, thousands. And what we notice in each of these columns is that as we go from one column to the next, we're 10 times smaller. We divide by 10 each time we go from column to column. My decimal point here is just separating the numbers that are bigger than 1 from the numbers that are less than 1, smaller than 1. Now, what I've been asked to do here is to divide by 100. So if I wanted to divide by 10, I would just move my digit from one column to the next. If I want to divide by 100, that's like dividing by 10 and then dividing by 10 again, because we've got 2 zeros here. So my 7 is going to go 1, 2, and appear in this column here. My 2, 1, 2. Now, if I leave that up in the air like that, then that looks like 72. So I need to make clear that my 7 is now in my hundreds column. So fill in my 0 placeholders here and my decimal point. So there is my answer, 0.072. If you need to have a nugget on century to look at, have a look on 2.12 and maybe go back and have a look at question 1 here, which was multiplication. Okay. All right. Rounding to the nearest thousand. Let's have a look at our number line here. 24,000, 25,000. So we're counting in thousands. 27,000. So if we're after the number that is nearest 26,000, then as we go from 25,000 towards 26,000, at this point here, which is halfway, we're suddenly nearer to 26,000. So any numbers here are nearest 26,000. When do they stop? They stop at this point here, halfway. Well, let's have a think. What numbers are halfway here? 25,500 and 26,500 are the numbers that are halfway. So the numbers anywhere in this range here are going to round to 26,000. But let's remember that if we're exactly halfway, we would round up to 27,000. So the biggest number that I need is going to be one smaller than that, which is 26,499. Now, if we wanted to write this as a range or as an interval, then this is, I'm going to write my number here as n. So it's numbers that are less than 26,499 and numbers that are bigger than 25,500. Now here we have to write backwards numbers greater than 25,500. So 25,500 is smaller than my number. So my number is bigger than 25,500. And so the sort of topics that we're talking about here are bounds, the bound, or the interval, and a really good nugget for you to look at here is 9.13. If you want to go back and just remind yourself about your rounding rules and how to do that, then go and have a look at nugget 2.13. Okay, but the answer to our question here is 26,499. Good, that's the end of today's 5-a-day solutions. A little bit trickier today. Hope you enjoyed them though and finding them useful. Have a go at today's, and if you've got any problems, ask your maths teacher.